into this big channel with all this fresh running water, and that is my first introduction. This is the end of January. Our country up home on the dry area is all dry, and we suddenly crossed the road and crossed this big channel, all this running water and beautiful green grass. And I sort of said to myself then, I don't think I'll be going back to the dry area. So that's how we got into the irrigation.
That's veteran rice grower George Rathbone kicking off this episode of Unearthed, the Agri-Futures podcast all about the people changing Australian agriculture. I'm Michael Thompson. This is the first of two episodes that will be revealing the fascinating history of Australia's rice industry, as well as its plans for the future. If you had to guess, how long do you reckon we've been growing rice in Australia? It might surprise you to hear that the industry is this year celebrating 100 years since the first commercial production. From the late 1800s, there'd been small-scale crops grown by Chinese gold prospectors, but things changed in 1914 when Japanese immigrant Joe Takasuka grew enough rice near Swan Hill in Victoria for people to sit up and take notice. The fact that it took another 11 years for rice to go from a back paddock crop to a commercial venture says a lot about the difficulties of starting an industry from scratch.
It was hard work. On that single furrow plough was hard work. Yeah, very hard work. And you dug up everything, snakes, clods. It was pretty hard work.
George Rathbone is 95 years old and has seen pretty much everything there is to see in Australia's rice industry. He's been growing the crop since he was just 11 years old, when his family moved from the Riverina to the Murray Valley to caretake his uncle's farms while they were away at the war. It goes without saying that in those early days, it was hard physical work.
You had a platform on the machine, on your header, and as come through there, you had a man on there, and you'd get about 10 bags on that platform, and then you'd pull up and unload that onto the ground, and then a bag sewer would come and sew them up, and then the snigging out bloke, we called him, he'd come along with a trailer, cart them out and stack them out on dry ground, ready for the truck to pick them up to go up to the silos.
You must have been happy when machinery started taking the place of that job. That sounds like heavy lifting.
I kept you fit. Yeah, it was heavy lifting. I played football there for the seconds at Griffith, and I didn't go to a few practice matches, and I said to the coach, I said, I'm lumping bags, I'm pretty fit, but he didn't take that as an excuse.
Heavy machinery was a game changer for the people on the ground, even though it's a far cry from the tractors and headers and harvesters that we use today.
When we first went to, in 1941, Dad used just an ordinary wheat HV Mackay combine that you sowed wheat with. You sowed the dry, you just had the rice dry, the seed, and you sowed it into the ground the same as wheat, only very shallow.
And access to things like tractors, when did that come in?
About on the farm at Leeton, when we went there in 41, there was a international McCormick Dairying tractor there on steel wheels, and about from then on, the tractors started to come around. And Dad bought, I think, it was one of the first after the war, an international W6 McCormick Dairying tractor from America. After the war, those tractors could come to Australia then, and it was our first tractor. Before that, most of it was done with horses.
And as for getting water onto those early crops, the farmers used rudimentary implements to build the irrigation channels from scratch.
In those days, you had a single furrow plough and a delver, a steel delver. I think some of the early delvers are made of timber, and you ploughed it up and back, and then you run the delver, as they called it, up, and that made the banks. The average, or if you did a contract, the height of a bank was 18 inches high and a foot wide on top of the bank. That was a Water Commission rule if you're contract banking.
Back then, there was plentiful access to water. The small amounts that are used today by comparison still takes George by surprise.
I went out, his grandson out at Tullico wanted me to help him with the water, and I scratched around, found a pair of gumboots and a shovel, and when I got out there, he said, "What do you want them for?"
Over the course of this episode and the next, the themes of water use, new technologies, and adapting to change will come up a lot. In fact, they're a common theme each year at the Australian Rice Conference hosted by the Rice Growers Association of Australia, which, by the way, George still diligently attends to keep abreast of the latest issues. This year's event in Leeton had a special significance, with celebrations to mark the industry's centenary. The Leeton Museum held an exhibition of historical photographs and artefacts to celebrate the industry's impact on the local community and economy. It's a rich history of vision and determination, the hardjacker of digging channels and creating paddies from scratch, endless innovation to convert traditional Asian growing techniques to new methods suited to the Australian environment, and adaptation as regulation and environmental reforms changed the way growers thought about water and their place in a changing climate. But it's a tale that most Australians are unaware of, even as they grab their red bag of medium grain sunrice from the supermarket shelf.
I remember my wife saying, "Graham, here's a job that's perfectly fit for you. It's in the rice industry." I said, "I didn't even know there was a rice industry in Australia."
Graham Kruger has been the executive director of the Rice Growers Association for the last 9 years, and although born in South Africa, he immediately felt right at home when he arrived in Leeton, New South Wales.
I'm able to still find a place that links back to that inner purpose of something that is benefiting the environment. It was when I look at a rice paddy and I said it's a pop-up wetland. It is a summer cropping option in Australia. It is full of life. In actual fact, it's a breeding ground for one of Australia's rarest water birds that was almost on the end of extinction. It's the Australasian bittern, or the bunyip.
The bunyip bird, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know. I only learned about the bunyip bird this morning. It's quite incredible, the abundance of life in a wetland like that.
Yes.
Do you think that role of rice growers as environmental custodians, if you will, it's flown under the radar a fair bit amidst all the criticisms around water and water extraction?
Yeah, so I mean, I know, and often when I get into a taxi in other parts of Australia and I tell them what I do, they say, well, why on earth would we grow rice in Australia? And I say to them, well, it's an annual crop. If there's no water, you don't plant it. And if we've got a variable climate, when there's drought, you don't plant rice. So it's actually the best shock absorber for the system. And when there's lots of water, it's the perfect thing to grow. However, on top of that, Australian rice growers are absolute stewards of land.
Clearly, a lot has changed since George crossed that clear-flowing channel of fresh water back in 1941. Changing economic and environmental imperatives have forced a focus on growing more with less. In 2021, in the AgriFutures Rice Program Strategic RD&E Plan, the industry set itself the target of improving water use efficiency to an average of 1.5 tonnes yield of rice per every megalitre used. That's almost double the average of 0.85 tonnes per megalitre that was achieved between 2012 and 2020. And it's a goal that's only going to be achievable if there's a shared determination by farmers and researchers alike.
They've participated and understand that the environment needs a drink. But it was very interesting listening to a message that Murray Watt gave for our opening of our conference, where he said, for the basin plan to work, there's got to be three things: irrigators, the communities, and the environment all need to benefit. And our growers at the heart of that have understood that the way in which they grew rice and their grandparents grew rice, they knew needed to change. And so we've pushed ourselves. We've set some ambitious goals. We're making every drop count, but we're saying even that's not good enough. We've got to keep going to be able to stay a sustainable, viable industry that consumers feel very, very comfortable.
So the industry set itself that target of 1.5 tonnes per meg. How soon will it get there? I mean, it's an ambitious goal.
So we've already had probably the last 2 or 3 years, our top growers are already achieving that.
Wow.
And we've had what we could probably regard as a world record, so 17.3 tonnes per hectare this year, and
That's incredible.
the world average they say is 8, but if you actually, depending on what you look at, it's about 4.5 tons per hectare. So it's significant. What we're saying is we want that to be the average. So we've got to lift up the bottom 50% of growers who are quite, sometimes you get the early adopters and people that challenge, and then they bring and they show the rest of the industry how easy it is, or what is the steps that you need to take on your farm to achieve that excellence. And so that's our goal, and it's about extension of best practice, adoption, growers sharing through field walks, meetings, and conferences like we're having at the moment, where we can share how farmers can get a better return, but making sure that they're doing it in a sustainable way, that they're not destroying the very foundation, which is their land that they are stewards of.
At the cutting edge of these more water efficient and productive practices are growers Michael and Felicia Chalmers. They were named the 2025 Sunrise Growers of the Year at the recent Australian Rice Conference.
We came back in 2006, all revved up to grow a heap of rice, and then we ran smack bang into the millennium drought. So that pulled us up a bit, and then we've sort of recovered from that, and then we've been going through the water reform process ever since. So we, like every other irrigator, have had to tighten our belts, find efficiencies, and we've done everything we can to make sure that we're recycling all of our tailwater, but also, just trying to increase our growing production per megalitre of water use, which we have done, and which we look forward to, in conjunction with rice breeding, increasing that over the next 5 to 10 years.
There has been, the whole time, the Murray-Darling Basin's been the rules have been changed and altered. But as a business, we just have to adapt, because if you don't adapt, you fall down. So the things that Michael said around water use efficiency is really key. We've also gone into tried to make our business more resilient to drought, but also to those regulatory changes that come through. So we've got more dryland cropping country now. We've moved to putting pivots in, so that we can pivots and lateral irrigators, so that we can water our cereals more efficiently. And it just means that across the business we've got more diversity, and we can sort of handle those chops and changes in water availability. It means slightly more readily.
We can be a bit more selective about how we use whatever water resource we have that year. So in the 20 years that we've been here, we've achieved about a 20% increase in our yield per meg. We still use about the same amount of megs per hectare, but we've gone from averaging around about 9.5 to 10 tonnes per hectare to 12 to 12.5 tonnes per hectare. And one of the changes that's on the horizon is the potential for aerobic rice, which we hope that we can get to. The industry target is to get to 1.5 tonnes per megalitre, and hopefully get our water use down to 10 megalitres per hectare and up to 15 tonnes yield. And part of that is potentially the introduction of aerobic rice, but also we're working on our variable rate technologies and the applications to try and bring up the average of our paddocks. So put the fertiliser in the right place, so that we can bring those underperforming areas up to the top performing areas and have it all evened out and achieve it that way.
So for an industry to have survived and thrived for 100 years in some pretty tough conditions, I mean, is there a culture of adaptability amongst rice growers? Is that a common trait?
Everyone is genuinely keen to adapt and improve, because they love growing rice and they want to see it continue.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the hallmarks of the rice industry and rice growers is the ability to pivot and adapt to changes, and I think it's been an innovative industry right from its start.
When I spoke with 95-year-old industry pioneer George Rathbone, he recalled the introduction of Tiger Moth planes for aerial fertiliser applications. Can you picture that? And later on, the aerial seeding techniques, which then remained common practice well into the 21st century. But for the Chalmers, one of the most notable changes in their time has been the end of aerial sowing and the return to ground rig seeding.
I think probably the biggest change for us is moving from aerial sown rice to drill sown rice, and there's a few things that go with that. Being able to use our own machinery for a lot more of the inputs, and also being able to utilize variable rate applications. So that's where we divide our paddocks up into zones and apply our fertilizers and a couple of other inputs at different rates across those zones
based on what the crop actually needs.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest change.
And that shift from aerial to ground seeding, is that resulting in better germination, better strike? Why that shift?
Yeah. So we get a better establishment and a more simplified establishment where, we don't have to worry about ducks, which are a real problem for aerial sown rice, aquatic snails, wind events. And it means that for us, we're able to focus on our winter cereal harvest, which happens about the same time, without being there micromanaging the rice crop. And also, if we pick up a rain event, which means we can avoid 1 or 2 flushes, then that really simplifies it.
It's not just the rice crop that's benefiting from improved water management, it's the whole farm. From the creeks and the environment to the planting of winter cereals after the harvest of the summer rice.
We can recycle water. One is stored in the profile, which coming out of a rice crop, you've got a full profile in the soil, a full moisture profile in the soil. So we can then plant a cereal crop straight on the back of the rice crop and generally with minimal extra water use, get a decent cereal crop off that same moisture profile. And then the second is just being really conscious of tailwater and making sure that all of that gets recycled onto either, back onto the rice, or if you're at the end of the rice crop, turning that back around and using it onto a pasture or a cereal paddock.
And tailwater into environmental use.
Yep. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, more than the past.
Yeah, we have depending on the availability of water, we've done our own environmental watering projects on farm and in particular in this creek system. Prior to the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder taking an interest in it. And doing proper engineering and potentially supplying water, which will happen. I think it's only a couple of months away from us seeing that creek system watered.
This willingness to adapt and innovate is attracting a new generation to the industry. Meg Brown is an agronomist with elders in Griffith in New South Wales, but she grew up in Sydney with no interaction at all with rice production. But that's now changed. She's developed a passion for rice growing, its agronomy, and the industry's future.
With rice, it's the innovation that's part of it, and the people are so forthcoming with their information, so they're more than happy to tell you what they do and where they've got their information from as well. I know when I was first cutting my teeth in it, I had a really strong relationship with the guys at Rice Extension, and as I went further in my career and what I'm doing now, I'm doing mentoring for people who are coming up through the ranks. And so AgriFutures was really good because I got to go and do some of the capacity building and leadership programs. So for me, it's the support and the investment in capacity building and the next gen that I think is really fantastic about the rice industry.
As a newcomer to the industry, are you seeing that same sort of vibe? I mean, is that when you talk about the information sharing, is that because everyone wants to have a go and get stuck in?
Yeah, I think we're at this point at the moment where water is quite limiting for us. So to be able to keep continuing in this industry, we need to be, thrifty in the way that we're using our resources. And so whether that be sustainability in the sense of what inputs we're putting in, but also the way that growers are going about things. So they're short on time, they're short on resources. The best way to do that is to be innovative in the way that you go about things.
So what are some of the new technologies or practices that you've been helping farmers implement?
Some of the biggest ones was a dashboard implementation, so adopting that. So that helped a lot with understanding where their crop was up to, where different parts of the paddock might have been sort of not going as well as they might have at first anticipated. And we could then go through and have a look and say, okay, from the NDVI images, for example, this is what we're seeing and how we can go about adjusting that. And we also found with the dashboard too, particularly at the back end of the season, we could start making our plan on when we do drainage and that sort of thing. And those simple tools with having a bit of AI behind it in terms of forecasting when we're going to get to 22% grain moisture, those things really help to be able to have that second mind behind it, I guess. So instead of just relying solely on, I feel like this is the best option, here's some data behind it to drive that decision.
So it's that precision ag, variable rate, real micro detail on every decision now.
Pretty well, yeah, like to the point where I'll do soil tests and I can go and call someone from PCT Ag, for example, and they do a complete overhaul of the information you've got, and they'll go, okay, cool, you want to make a variable rate map? We can make it for the technology you're working with. And we can plug and play, basically, put the USB in, and the grower doesn't have to worry about, putting it into their system. It's already doing it for him.
Yeah, wow. How do you go with conversations with some of the old timers around some of the new technology?
I think the biggest thing is like reassuring them it's not getting rid of anything that they're used to. It's only there to assist, and it's up to you how much you want to adopt. So whether it's a lot or a little, that's still your decision at the end of the day. And that's the biggest thing. Not everybody's pulling your arm, telling you must do it this way. I'm adopting it to save my own time, and this is the reason why we're doing it.
I get a sense that there's a strong sense of community amongst rice growers, that it's not just about them competing against the neighbour, but they're working together for the industry and the region as a whole.
Yeah, they love showcasing what other people are doing, and especially if new people are coming into the industry, like the young growers coming through, whether they're sons that are sort of taking on the family business. No one shuts them down and says, oh, you can't do it that way. They're more than happy to sort of take you under the wing and go, hey, be a part of this WhatsApp group. This is what we're all talking about, and these are the reasons we go about it this way. So I think that's a really big, strong point.
For Michael and Felicia Chalmers, there's more to being a rice farmer than just growing a crop. It's also about family, community, and connection to the land.
Yeah, so Felicia and I were both working off farm down in Bendigo, and the opportunity came up for us to come back here and be part of the family business. And for me, it was the chance to be self-employed, own our own business, but also the opportunity to have our kids grow up in a similar environment to what I grew up in, which I loved growing up with room to move and all the things associated with farming. One of the things that I remember about rice farming as a kid, we used to grow all of our rice aerial sown, and we used to soak bags of rice in the channel in Hessian bags. And it was always like a treasure hunt. Me and my brothers and sisters would be in the channel trying to chase down those last couple of bags that had floated away. You get out of the channel, it was October, so it was generally freezing cold. You get out of the channel with these last couple of bags, you pick all the leeches off. But it was a fun time, that sort of stuff.
And our kids don't have the pleasure of that, but they do get to, they enjoy coming out and checking the water with you, because often it means pulling the slide and letting the water gush through into the next bay, and they like to have a splash around in that.
Yep.
So
having a swim if it's warm enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've embraced that lifestyle too, Felicia? Not quite the leeches, though.
Not the leeches, definitely not the leeches. It was a baptism of fire coming in from having no farming background, and I still, like many farming families, we do struggle a little bit with the work-life balance, but that's something we've worked really hard on in the last 4 or 5 years, especially, is to get that balance back so that we can enjoy life on the farm and not be tied to it 24/7.
Looking back over the last 100 years, it's incredible to think of the constant change the rice industry has embraced in that time. From starting out with horses and lots of heavy lifting, then onto tractors and planes, and now with a new understanding of soils, water and plant genetics, they've returned to Earth with tractors again, but this time geared up with precision implements and super smart computing. Yields are bigger than ever, and water use is more productive and efficient than before. Can it get any better than this? We'll find out in the next episode of Unearthed, when we'll meet the researchers breeding new cold-tolerant varieties that are potentially an absolute game changer for the industry. Plus, we'll share with you the latest piece of automated irrigation technology being trialled by Michael and Felicia Chalmers. And we'll enjoy some words of wisdom from our living legend, George Rathbone, about what the future holds for the rice industry. That's next time on Unearthed, the People Changing Australian Agriculture, a podcast brought to you by AgriFutures Australia.